The WNBA just crossed a line they can't uncross. And what happened next exposed a rift so deep, it's threatening to tear the league apart from the inside. Picture this. A veteran player, someone who's bled for this league for years, stands up in a team meeting and says what nobody else will. Stop pretending she's not the reason we're all getting paid more. The room goes silent. Some players nod. Others look away. And that tension? It's not going away. This isn't about basketball anymore. This is about power, money, and a reality the WNBA desperately wants to control, but can't. When Caitlin Clark's trading card sold out in 3 hours at $85 a box, something shifted. Not just in the market, but in the locker rooms. Because while league executives celebrated record-breaking revenue, veteran players started asking uncomfortable questions. Why is one rookie generating more money than entire franchises did just 2 years ago? And more importantly, who really controls the league's future now? The answer is making people uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. See, there's a document circulating among WNBA ownership groups right now. It's not public. It won't be. But it breaks down revenue streams from the 2024 season, and one number keeps appearing next to Caitlin Clark's name, 47%. That's the percentage of new league revenue directly traceable to her presence. Nearly half, from one player in one season. Now imagine you're a 10-year veteran who fought through empty arenas, minimal coverage, and constant disrespect. You sacrifice your body, your prime years, building this league brick by brick. Then a 22-year-old shows up, and suddenly everyone cares. Suddenly there's money. Suddenly your work seems invisible. That's the powder keg nobody's talking about. But Sophie Cunningham just lit the match. When she went public defending Clark as the face of the league, she wasn't just stating facts. She was choosing a side in a war that's been brewing since draft night. A war between the old guard who built the foundation and the new reality that's rewriting every rule they thought they knew. But here's where it gets darker. 3 weeks ago, during CBA negotiations, player representatives presented ownership with demands for a 50% revenue share. Standard stuff, right? Wrong. Because when ownership countered, they included a clause nobody expected. They wanted to implement what they're calling market value compensation. Essentially, the ability to pay players based on their individual revenue generation, not just their on-court performance. You know whose name was written all over that proposal without being mentioned once? Caitlin Clark. The Players Association rejected it immediately. They called it divisive, destructive, anti-union. But privately, some players are reconsidering. Because if that 47% number is real and multiple sources confirm it is, then the current system is already broken. It's just that nobody wants to admit it publicly. Think about what this really means. The WNBA spent 27 years trying to build something sustainable. They had stars, legends even. Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Maya Moore. Incredible players who deserved every accolade. But none of them moved the needle like this. None of them had trading card companies creating entire collections around their rookie season. None of them had sold out arenas, following them to every road game. And that's not their fault. Timing matters. Context matters. But results matter more. When Target sold out of Caitlin Clark trading cards faster than they sell PlayStation consoles at Christmas, that wasn't luck. When ESPN started covering WNBA games like they were NBA playoffs, that wasn't coincidence. When corporate sponsors who never returned the league's calls suddenly started bidding wars for partnership deals, that wasn't organic growth. That was the Caitlin Clark effect. And pretending otherwise isn't protecting anyone. It's insulting everyone's intelligence. But the real bombshell isn't what's happening now. It's what's coming next. Because Clark hasn't even played her second season yet. She hasn't reached her prime. She hasn't built her full brand. And already, she's restructuring the entire economics of women's professional basketball. Already, she's forcing conversations nobody was ready to have. So when Dan Patrick, a man who's seen every sports phenomenon of the last 3 decades, refuses to open her trading card box because he knows it'll be worth more sealed, he's not being dramatic. He's recognizing what's happening in real time. A shift so seismic that even the league trying to manage it has lost control. The question isn't whether Caitlin Clark is the face of the WNBA anymore. The question is whether the WNBA can survive what comes with that reality. Because what Sophie Cunningham said publicly, that's nothing compared to what players are saying privately. And what they're saying would shock you. Behind closed doors, WNBA players are having conversations that would end careers if they went public. And I'm about to tell you exactly what they're saying. She saved us, but she might destroy us too. That's a direct quote from a current All-Star who asked to remain anonymous. She said it during a private dinner with teammates after learning about the league's new television deal. A deal worth $200 million annually. A deal that wouldn't exist without the viewership spike Caitlin Clark delivered. But here's what that player said next. If they start paying based on who brings in money, half this league disappears. And we all know it. She's not wrong. And that's the nightmare scenario nobody wants to acknowledge. The WNBA has always operated on a collective model. Equal pay for equal work. Salary caps that keep teams competitive. A rising tide lifts all boats. It's beautiful in theory. Noble even. But Caitlin Clark isn't a rising tide. She's a tsunami. And tsunamis don't lift boats. They flip them. Let me paint you a picture of how dramatic this shift really is. In 2023, the Indiana Fever averaged 4,000 fans per home game. In 2024, with Clark on the roster, they averaged 17,000. That's not growth. That's transformation. But it gets more intense. Their road games in other teams' arenas, average higher attendance than those teams' own home games without the Fever. Think about what that means. Fans in Los Angeles were more excited to see Indiana play than their own Sparks. Fans in Chicago packed the arena for the Fever, not the Sky. That's not supporting women's basketball broadly. That's following one specific player. And every player in the league knows it. They see the numbers. They feel the energy shift when Clark walks into an arena. They watch their own social media engagement spike only when they're playing against her or posting about her. One veteran told me something that sent chills down my spine. We spent years begging people to watch us play. She shows up, and suddenly we're ungrateful if we don't appreciate the attention. But whose attention is it really? That question haunts the league right now. Because if Caitlin Clark decided tomorrow to sit out a season, to play overseas, to retire early, what happens to all this newfound interest? What happens to the TV deals, the sponsorships, the sold-out arenas? Everyone knows the answer. They just can't say it. But Sophie Cunningham did. And the backlash she's facing privately makes her public support look tame. 3 players have already unfollowed her on social media. Team group chats have gone silent when she joins. One player allegedly told Cunningham she betrayed everything we built by acknowledging Clark's singular impact. The divide isn't just philosophical anymore. It's personal. It's visceral. It's fracturing friendships that survived decades of adversity. Why? Because Cunningham exposed a lie everyone agreed to tell. The lie that this growth is collective. The lie that all boats are rising equally. The lie that Caitlin Clark is just another talented player in a league full of them. But markets don't lie. And the market has spoken louder than any press release ever could. When Panini created that 100-card Caitlin Clark collection, they didn't consult the WNBA Players Association. They didn't ask for permission. They saw an opportunity and took it. And when it sold out instantly at premium prices, it proved something the league doesn't want to admit. Clark doesn't need the WNBA's permission to be valuable. The WNBA needs her value to survive. That power dynamic has flipped everything. Rookie players are now signing bigger endorsement deals than 10-year veterans. Not because they're better players, but because brands see them as the next Caitlin Clark. Agents are demanding unprecedented clauses in contracts, knowing that Clark has reset the market. One agent told me they're now asking for Clark provisions, guarantees that if their client generates similar revenue metrics, they get compensated accordingly. The veterans hate it. They call it disrespectful, short-sighted, poisonous to team chemistry. But they can't stop it, because money talks louder than tradition. And the money is screaming right now. Here's a stat that will blow your mind. Caitlin Clark jerseys outsold the next 5 players combined. Not just rookies. All players. Combined, the Indiana Fever made more in merchandise revenue in Clark's rookie season than they made in the previous 3 years total. But that money doesn't get distributed equally. The players know it. The owners know it. And now, thanks to Sophie Cunningham, the public is starting to know it too. What happens when one player's gravity becomes so strong that the entire league orbits around her? We're about to find out, because this situation is accelerating, not stabilizing. The phone call that changed everything happened at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. A WNBA superstar, someone whose name you'd recognize instantly, called her agent sobbing. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "I've given everything to this league, and now I'm invisible." That player had just seen her signature shoe line get canceled after 8 years with the brand. The reason? They're redirecting that budget to pursue Caitlin Clark for 2025. A player who hasn't even finished her rookie season is taking endorsement deals from players who built their entire careers here. But that's not the part that broke her. The part that broke her was the meeting she'd just left, a closed-door session with team ownership where they showed next season's marketing budget. 78% of it was allocated to Clark-adjacent initiatives, not to promote the team, not to highlight their other stars, but to capitalize on the 4 games they'd play against Indiana. For games, that's all they cared about. For chances to sell tickets at triple the normal price. For opportunities to pack the arena. For moments that mattered more than the other 36 games combined. She asked ownership one question: what about when she retires? Their answer? We'll deal with that when it happens. That's the dirty secret nobody wants to discuss. The WNBA isn't building sustainable growth. They're riding a wave they can't control, hoping it doesn't crash before they figure out what comes next. But some players aren't waiting to find out. Right now, there's a WhatsApp group with 23 WNBA players in it. They call it the reality check. No coaches, no media, no league officials. Just players discussing what's really happening. And what they're saying would shake the foundation of everything the public believes about women's basketball. One message stands out. It was sent after Sophie Cunningham's comments went viral. She said what we're all thinking but are too scared to admit. CC owns this league now. We're just renting space in it. The responses were explosive. Some players agreed, calling it finally someone being honest. Others called it surrender, defeat, giving up everything we fought for. But one veteran's response silenced everyone. If stating facts is surrender, we already lost. That veteran was right about one thing. The facts are undeniable. When the WNBA negotiated their new media deal, broadcasters asked for one guarantee: a minimum number of Caitlin Clark games in prime broadcasting slots. Not Indiana Fever games. Caitlin Clark games. The league agreed immediately. They had no choice. Without that guarantee, the deal drops by an estimated 40%. 40% of the entire media deal, tied to one player's presence. But it gets worse. Insurance companies are now creating what they're calling Clark clauses for arena vendors and broadcasters. Essentially, if she gets injured or misses games, they can recoup losses from decreased attendance and viewership. They're literally insuring against her absence like she's a natural disaster or economic downturn. When has that ever happened in women's sports? When has one athlete's presence been so vital that businesses need financial protection from their absence? Never. Until now. And that unprecedented reality is creating unprecedented tension. 2 weeks ago, at a Players Association meeting, someone proposed a radical idea: cap individual endorsement deals to protect league parity. The room erupted. Younger players called it jealousy disguised as justice. Veterans called it necessary for survival. The meeting ended with no resolution, just more division. But the real explosion happened afterward. A second-year player posted in the group chat, "Y'all want to limit our earning potential because one of us figure out how to make this league matter? That's not protection. That's sabotage." The response was immediate and brutal. Veterans started sharing stories of playing in high school gyms, taking second jobs to pay rent, fighting for basic recognition. One wrote, "We bled for crumbs, and now you want to feast alone?" The generational divide is becoming a canyon, and Caitlin Clark is standing right in the middle of it, whether she wants to be or not. But here's what nobody's discussing publicly. Clark knows exactly what's happening. She sees the resentment. She feels the tension. And according to sources close to her, she's considering something that would change everything. She's thinking about taking less money. Not from the league, from endorsements. She's considering capping her own deals to avoid becoming the flashpoint that tears the league apart. Her inner circle is divided. Some call it noble. Others call it naive. But everyone agrees on one thing. It won't solve the real problem. Because the problem isn't Caitlin Clark's money. It's Caitlin Clark's gravity. She doesn't just attract fans. She creates them. She doesn't just sell tickets. She sells the sport itself. And that kind of power can't be redistributed or regulated. It simply exists. The email was marked confidential, legal review required. It landed in every WNBA owner's inbox at midnight on December 3rd. The subject line was simple: competitive balance crisis, immediate action required. What was inside that email would lead to an emergency owners meeting that nobody's supposed to know happened. The document contained a projection model for the next 5 years. It showed what happens if current trends continue. If Caitlin Clark maintains her trajectory, if the league keeps operating under its current structure. The conclusion was devastating. By 2027, 3 franchises would be financially unviable without playing Indiana at home. 3 teams. Gone. Unless they could feed off Caitlin Clark's presence at least twice a year. One owner, who's been with the league since its founding, read that report and immediately called an emergency meeting with his team stars. What he told them changed everything. We need to make a choice. Either we find our own Caitlin Clark, or we accept that we're now a supporting cast in her league. That owner wasn't being dramatic. He was being practical. Because here's what the public doesn't understand about WNBA economics. Most teams barely break even in good years. They survive on thin margins, corporate goodwill, and ownership groups that treat them as passion projects, not profit centers. But Caitlin Clark changed the math. She turned passion projects into potential gold mines. But only if you have access to her. The Las Vegas Aces learned this the hard way. They're the back-to-back champions. They have Aya Wilson, the league MVP. They should be the model franchise. But their season ticket renewals for 2025 are down 12%. Why? Because Indiana only visits once next season. Once. And that single game is already sold out at prices higher than the NBA playoffs. Think about that psychology. Fans are less interested in watching champions because they'll only see Caitlin Clark once. Aya Wilson knows this. And according to multiple sources, she's furious. Not at Clark personally, but at what Clark represents. A reality where winning championships matters less than viral moments and cultural relevance. But Wilson can't say that publicly. None of them can. Because the moment any player criticizes a Clark phenomenon, they become the villain. They become the bitter veteran who can't accept change. They become everything fans hate about gatekeepers and old guards. So they stay silent, and the resentment festers. But Sophie Cunningham broke that silence. And what happened next nobody saw coming. Within 48 hours of her comments, she received 3 endorsement offers. Major brands who had never approached her before suddenly wanted her as a spokesperson. Why? Because she was brave enough to speak truth. Because she represents authentic leadership. Because she was trending. She turned them all down. But other players noticed. They saw how aligning with Clark, even just verbally, opened doors that had been closed for years. And quietly, secretly, the alliance started forming. They call themselves the new reality. 8 players who decided to stop fighting the Clark effect and start writing it. They coordinate social media posts about her. They create content together when their teams play Indiana. They've accepted that proximity to Caitlin Clark is more valuable than traditional success metrics. One of them told me something that's haunting. I've made more money in 6 months of Clark-adjacent content than I made in 5 years of all-star selections. But for every player joining this new reality, 2 more are digging in against it. The resistance is organizing too. They have their own group chat, their own strategy sessions, their own plans. They're pushing for salary structure changes that would limit individual marketing power. They want endorsement pooling, where all deals go into a collective fund. They want to protect the league's integrity. What they really want is to stop Caitlin Clark from becoming bigger than the league itself. But it might already be too late, because last week, something unprecedented happened. Nike approached Caitlin Clark with an offer that would make her the highest paid female athlete in team sports history. Not just basketball, all team sports. The number being thrown around is $150 million over 8 years, with equity stakes and signature products that go beyond shoes. But here's the part that's causing panic. The deal includes provisions for Clark to play internationally during WNBA off-seasons, to join exhibitions that don't include other WNBA players, to essentially build her own basketball ecosystem that exists parallel to, not within, the WNBA. The league can't stop it. They have no legal grounds to prevent a player from maximizing their off-season earning potential. But they know what it means. If Clark takes that deal, she becomes bigger than the league that houses her. She becomes a free agent of influence, using the WNBA as just one platform among many. And if that happens, the league loses any leverage it had left. The vote was 16-8, behind closed doors, in a meeting that officially never happened. WNBA players voted on whether to demand Caitlin Clark sit out nationally televised games to redistribute viewership opportunities. 16 players actually voted yes. They wanted to bench their biggest star to protect everyone else. When Clark found out about this vote, and she did find out, her response shocked everyone who heard it. She laughed. Not bitter laughter, not angry laughter, just amusement. Then she said 5 words that revealed she understands her power better than anyone. They need me playing more, not less. She was right. And what happened next proved it. Within hours of that leaked vote, 3 major sponsors called the league office with the same message. Any artificial limiting of Clark's playing time would trigger partnership reevaluation. Translation, bench her and we pull our money. One sponsor was more direct. They said they'd shift their entire WNBA budget to Clark's personal brand partnerships. Cut the league out entirely. Go straight to the source of value. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert had to make emergency calls to team owners. The message was clear. That vote never happened. That discussion never occurred. Any player who acts on it faces immediate consequences. But the damage was done. The players had shown their hand. And Caitlin Clark had seen their cards. What she did next changed the game completely. Clark started a production company, quietly, through layers of LLCs and partnerships that kept her name off the paperwork. But everyone knows it's hers. The first project? A documentary series about the evolution of women's basketball. Sounds innocent enough. Until you learn she's already signed deals with 7 current WNBA players to appear in it. Not the players you'd expect. Not the stars or the veterans who built the league. She signed the middle-tier players. The ones making league minimum. The ones who've been invisible for years. And she's paying them more for one documentary appearance than they make in half a season. One player told me, tears in her eyes, she's doing what the league never did. She's making us matter. But veterans see it differently. They see it as buying loyalty, as creating a faction, as using financial power to split the league from within. One Hall of Famer called it the most dangerous thing to happen to women's basketball since its inception. They might be right, because Clark isn't just creating content. She's creating an alternative economy, a system where players can earn outside the league structure, but only if they align with her, only if they play by her rules, only if they accept the new reality she represents. And more players are accepting every day. The tipping point came during a December practice. The Seattle Storm were running drills when their best players suddenly stopped, walked to the sideline, and made a phone call. In the middle of practice, the coach started yelling. The player held up one finger. Wait. When she came back, she announced she'd just accepted a role in Clark's documentary. The coach asked when filming was. The player's response? Same week we play Indiana. I'll be promoting both. The coach knew what that meant. The player would use the team's biggest game to promote her personal project. The Storm Spotlight moment will become Clark's marketing vehicle. But what could the coach do? Bench the player? Fine her? Not when that documentary appearance would pay her more than her WNBA salary. This is the new mathematics of women's basketball. Every decision, every game, every moment gets filtered through one question. How does this relate to Caitlin Clark? But the scariest part isn't what's happening now. It's what happens when she leaves. Because players are starting to whisper about something that seemed impossible a year ago. What if Clark doesn't need the WNBA? What if she builds something bigger outside of it? There's already a blueprint. Ice Cube's Big 3 League proved you could create alternative basketball properties. What if someone created a women's league built entirely around marketable stars? What if they offered ownership stakes, revenue sharing, and salaries that dwarf WNBA maximums? What if Caitlin Clark wasn't just the face of the WNBA, but its biggest threat? One agent told me they've already been approached about this concept. Not by Clark directly, but by interested parties who see an opportunity. They're watching the civil war brewing in the WNBA and seeing a chance to recruit talent that feels undervalued or overshadowed. The pitch is simple. Why fight for scraps in Caitlin's shadow when you could be a founding partner in something new? Most players won't even take the meeting, but some are listening. Some are wondering if the WNBA's collective bargaining model has become a ceiling, not a floor. And that wondering is exactly what could destroy everything. The meeting happened in a Miami hotel suite at 3 a.m. No phones allowed. No recordings. Just 5 of the WNBA's biggest stars and a billionaire who made his fortune disrupting traditional industries. His offer was simple: $500 million to launch a rival league. Starting salaries at $400,000. Revenue sharing from day one. Equity stakes for founding players. And one non-negotiable requirement. Caitlin Clark had to be player number 1. 4 of those 5 stars said yes on the spot. The 5th asked for time to think. That 5th player was Sophie Cunningham. What she did next sent shockwaves through the entire basketball world. She went straight to Clark's apartment at 6 a.m. and told her everything. The offer, the players involved, the timeline, the money, everything. Clark's response? I know. They already asked me. Cunningham's heart dropped. If Clark already knew, why hadn't she warned anyone? Why hadn't she told the league? Why hadn't she tried to stop it? Clark's next words explained everything. I told him I'd only consider it if the WNBA forces my hand. That's when Cunningham realized the terrifying truth. Caitlin Clark wasn't trying to destroy the WNBA. She was holding a hostage. Every decision the league made, every policy they implemented, every move against her influence, it all pushed her closer to triggering a nuclear option that would end women's professional basketball as we know it. But the league didn't know they were playing with fire. They were about to make a catastrophic mistake. 2 days after that Miami meeting, the WNBA's competition committee proposed new rules for 2025. Salary cap restrictions that would limit individual endorsement deals. Marketing guidelines that would require equal promotional distribution across all players. Revenue sharing models that would essentially tax high earners to subsidize everyone else. They called it competitive balance reform. Players called it the Clark rules. When the proposal leaked, chaos erupted. Young players threatened walkouts. Agents started fielding calls from international leagues. Social media exploded with fans accusing the league of punishing success. But the real drama was happening in private messages between Clark and the other stars from that Miami meeting. They're forcing her hand, one wrote. Not yet, Clark replied. Let them show their cards. She was waiting, calculating, letting the league dig its own grave while she held a shovel. But someone wasn't willing to wait. Aya Wilson, 2-time MVP and the player many believed should be the face of the league, decided to take matters into her own hands. She called a players-only meeting. No Clark supporters, just the real WNBA players who had earned their place. 27 players showed up. They spent 3 hours discussing one thing: how to reclaim their league from one rookie's shadow. The plan they hatched was ruthless. They would coordinate a social media blackout for every Indiana Fever game. No posts, no stories, no engagement. They'd make Clark invisible by removing the amplification she got from other players' platforms. They'd show sponsors and broadcasters that she was just one player, not the entire league. It was brilliant. It was coordinated. It was completely legal. It was also the stupidest thing they could have done. Because when the first blackout happened during a nationally televised game, fans noticed immediately. The hashtag Where's the WNBA started trending. Fans began questioning why players weren't supporting each other. Media members smelled blood and started investigating. Within 24 hours, the story broke wide open. WNBA players boycott their own league's biggest star became the headline on every sports platform. The league looked petty, divided, and self-destructive. Sponsors were furious. Viewership tanked for non-Clark games as fans protested the treatment of their favorite player. The commissioner had to issue emergency statements about unity and misunderstandings. But the damage was catastrophic and irreversible. That's when the billionaire from Miami made his move. He went public with a modified offer, not a rival league, something worse. A touring exhibition series featuring basketball's most marketable stars, international venues, streaming deals, no salary caps, no collective bargaining, just pure market-driven basketball. And Caitlin Clark's name was at the top of the roster. The WNBA had 48 hours to respond before players could start signing letters of intent. 48 hours to save their league from complete implosion. 48 hours to undo decades of collective building. But in those 48 hours, something happened that nobody expected. Something that would either save women's basketball or destroy it completely. Caitlin Clark called her own meeting. And this time, she invited everyone. The ballroom at the Four Seasons was dead silent. 143 WNBA players sat in rows like they were attending a funeral, which, in a way, they were. Caitlin Clark stood at the front, no podium, no notes, no pretense. She wore jeans and a plain white t-shirt, no brands, no logos, just her. I have 17 hours left to accept or decline a $150 million offer that doesn't include any of you, she began. Her voice was steady, almost casual. So let's talk about reality. A veteran in the back started to stand up, ready to walk out. Clark's next words froze her in place. Sit down, Diana. You want to hear this. Diana Taurasi, the legend herself, slowly sat back down because when a rookie tells you to sit, you don't, unless that rookie holds your entire future in her hands. Clark continued, You hate me? Half of you, anyway. The other half are too scared to support me publicly. I get it. I showed up and changed your world without asking permission. That must sting. Someone muttered something under their breath. Clark heard it. What was that, Skylar? Speak up. We're all friends here. Skylar Diggins-Smith stood up. I said you didn't change anything. The media changed it. The racist fans changed it. You just happened to be white at the right time. The room held its breath. This was a conversation everyone avoided. The thing nobody said out loud. The radioactive truth that made every discussion about Clark impossible. Clark nodded. You're right. Being white helped. Having media-friendly features helped. Coming from Iowa helped. I won the genetic lottery for American marketability. So what do we do about it? Nobody expected that response. They expected defensiveness, anger, the usual dance around race that happened in public forums. They didn't expect acknowledgement. Here's what I know, Clark continued. The league made $60 million in revenue my rookie year. Previous year, $40 million. That's $20 million extra. Because of me? Partially. Because of the stories around me? Definitely. Because organizations finally invested in marketing? Absolutely. She pulled out her phone, connected it to the room screen. Numbers appeared. Real numbers. Not projections or estimates. Actual revenue data. Indiana Fever local revenue, up 347%. League merchandise sales, up 198%. Social media engagement, up 584%. Streaming subscriptions, up 232%. Then she switched screens. Now here's what happens if I leave. The projections were brutal. Every metric crashed. Not to pre-Clark levels, below them. Because once fans taste steak, they don't go back to hamburger. Once they experience sold-out arenas, they don't accept empty seats. The Miami offer isn't just for me, Clark revealed. They want 8 players initially, 12 by year 2, 20 by year 3. They're not building an alternative. They're gutting the WNBA from the inside. Aya Wilson stood up. So what? You're threatening us? Join your side or watch everything burn. No, Clark said. I'm showing you the gun pointed at our heads. Miami isn't the only offer. There are 3 international leagues preparing bids. 2 streaming platforms want to create their own basketball content. Everyone smells blood in the water. She paused, letting it sink in. But here's what they don't understand. I don't want to leave. I want to fix this. The room erupted. Players shouting over each other. Accusations flying. Years of resentment boiling over. Clark let it happen. For 30 seconds. Then she did something that shocked everyone. She screamed. Not words. Just a primal, frustrated scream that cut through everything. The room went silent again. Enough! Her composure cracked for the first time. You think I wanted this? You think I asked to be the white savior of women's basketball? You think I enjoy being hated for succeeding? Tears were forming in her eyes. Real tears. The untouchable rookie was breaking down. I just want to play basketball. I want to compete against the best. I grew up with posters of Diana, Sue, Maya on my walls. And now those same heroes hate me for existing. Do you know what that feels like? Sophie Cunningham started moving toward her, but Clark held up a hand. I have a proposal. One that saves everyone. One that makes us all rich. One that preserves the league while acknowledging reality. But it requires something none of you want to give. She looked directly at the veterans, at the power brokers, at the players who'd built their identities on being guardians of the game. It requires admitting that the old way is dead. And I killed it. The words hung in the air like a challenge, like a confession, like a declaration of war and peace simultaneously. Then Caitlin Clark laid out her plan. And when she finished, the room was different. Everything was different. Because what she proposed would either save women's basketball or expose every ugly truth they've been hiding. We create a league within a league, Clark said, called the WNBA+. The confusion in the room was instant. Players looked at each other, trying to understand. Clark pulled up a new presentation. Top 16 players based on revenue generation get plus status. They can sign unlimited endorsements. They get 40% of gate revenue for their games. They become equity partners in the league itself. But here's the catch. She clicked to the next slide. They pay a luxury tax. 30% of everything above $500,000 goes into a pool. That pool fund's base salary increases for every other player in the league. The floor rises to $150,000 immediately. Veterans get pension improvements. Everyone wins. Aya Wilson was the first to speak. You're creating a class system. Officially. No, Clark shot back. I'm acknowledging the class system that already exists. Right now, I make millions in endorsements while rookies can't afford rent. At least this way, my success funds their stability. And who decides who gets plus status? Another player asked. Clark's response was brutal in its simplicity. The market already decided. We just count the money. She showed the list. The 16 names were no surprise to anyone. Clark was first, by a massive margin. Then came the players everyone expected: Wilson, Stewart, Ionescu, Lloyd. But there were surprises too. Players whose social media presence outweighed their on-court performance. Players who'd built brands beyond basketball. This is disgusting. A veteran voice in the back. You're turning sisterhood into capitalism. Clark's laugh was bitter. Sisterhood? You tried to black out my games. You voted to bench me. You created WhatsApp groups to coordinate against me. What's sisterhood? The truth of it stung. Everyone felt it. But then something unexpected happened. Breanna Stewart stood up. What happens to the Miami offer? She asked quietly. Clark met her eyes. I kill it. Tonight. Publicly. Along with every other offer. I commit to the WNBA for 5 years minimum, but only if this passes. And if it doesn't, Clark's silence was the answer. If this didn't pass, she was gone. And based on a list she'd shown, at least half the league's marketable stars would follow. Diana Taurasi, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. You've thought about this for a while. Since the day I was drafted, Clark admitted, I knew this moment would come. Either we evolve together or we die separately. What about the racial dynamics? Taurasi pressed. You acknowledge your privilege, but your plan reinforces it. Clark nodded, which is why Phase 2 exists. She clicked to another slide. Every Plus player becomes a mandatory mentor. They sponsor 2 developing players, providing marketing support, brand building, and platform sharing. The goal isn't to maintain the hierarchy, it's to expand it. The room shifted. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about creating pathways. I've already started, Clark continued. Ask Aaliyah Boston about her new Nike deal. Ask Nalissa Smith about her documentary feature. I'm not hoarding opportunities. I'm creating them. Some players were nodding now. Others looked skeptical. But everyone was listening. The owners already agreed in principle. Clark dropped the bombshell. They see the numbers. They know what happens if I walk. They're ready to vote yes tomorrow. Chaos erupted again. Players felt blindsided. Clark had negotiated with owners before coming to them. The power play was obvious and brilliant. You snake, someone yelled. I'm a realist, Clark responded. And I'm tired of pretending we're all equal when the evidence says otherwise. But I'm also tired of that inequality being hidden, unaddressed, and toxic. Sophie Cunningham stood up. What do you need from us? 60% player approval. That's the threshold for CBA amendments. I need 86 yes votes. The math was clear. Clark couldn't do this alone. She needed buy-in from players who hated her, resented her, and wished she'd never entered their league. You have 12 hours to decide, Clark said. After that, I signed with Miami, and we'll see who follows. She started walking toward the exit, then stopped. One more thing, that $150 million Nike offer? If this passes, I split it. Every player in the league gets a bonus, about $87,000 each. Consider it a down payment on the future we're building together. The door closed behind her. The room exploded into arguments, debates, and calculations. But the seed was planted. The choice was clear. Evolution or extinction. And the clock was ticking. The vote was scheduled for noon. By 11:47 a.m., only 31 players had confirmed their position. The WNBA was 12 minutes away from complete annihilation, and nobody knew which way it would go. Caitlin Clark sat in her hotel room, phone in hand. Miami's contract pulled up on her laptop. Her thumb hovered over the accept button. One click would change everything. One click would end the WNBA as everyone knew it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diana Taurasi. We need to talk. Now. 3 minutes later, Taurasi was at her door. The woman who'd won everything, seen everything, survived everything in women's basketball, looked exhausted. I've spent my entire career protecting this league. Taurasi began. 20 years. 3 championships. And you know what? I'm tired of protecting something that refuses to grow. Clark said nothing. She knew when to let legends speak. I hate what you represent, Taurasi continued. Not you personally, but the idea that one person, one story, one marketable face could matter more than decades of collective work. It feels like erasure. It is erasure, Clark agreed, but not by me, by a system that only started caring when I showed up. Taurasi nodded slowly. That's why I'm voting yes. The words hung between them. The most powerful veteran in the league was siding with the rookie who disrupted everything. But I have conditions, Taurasi added. The mentorship program isn't optional. The revenue sharing is non-negotiable. And you personally ensure that no veteran gets pushed out for being unmarketable. Deal, Clark said immediately. And one more thing, Taurasi's eyes were steel. When this passes, and it will pass, you own it. Every success, every failure, every player who benefits or gets left behind. This becomes your legacy, not your scoring records. This. Clark extended her hand. Taurasi shook it. The deal that would reshape women's basketball was sealed in a hotel room handshake between its past and its future. But outside that room, civil war was erupting. The veterans' WhatsApp group was in chaos. Screenshots were leaking. Players were accusing each other of betrayal. Some who'd promised to vote no were wavering. Others who'd supported Clark were getting cold feet. Angel Reese went live on Instagram without warning. Y'all want to know what's really happening? I'll tell you. We're being asked to choose between pride and survival. And some of y'all choosing pride are about to be pridefully broke. The live stream went viral instantly. 400,000 viewers watching a WNBA player expose the league's internal drama in real time. Caitlin's proposal isn't perfect, Reese continued. But poverty isn't perfect either. Empty arenas aren't perfect. Being ignored isn't perfect. At least she's trying to fix it. Comments flooded in. Fans were shocked. Media members were scrambling to cover it. But Reese wasn't done. And to the veterans talking about legacy and respect, where was that energy when we were making $40,000 base? Where was that protection when nobody watched our games? You protected a broken system. She's trying to build a better one. She ended the stream with 5 words that would define the moment. I'm voting yes. Who's with me? Within minutes, players started declaring their positions publicly. Twitter became a real-time vote tracker. Yes votes were coming in faster now. The momentum was shifting. But the opposition was organizing too. A group of veterans led by Sylvia Fowles released a joint statement. We cannot support a system that officially declares some players more valuable than others. This violates everything we built. The clock hit 11:55 a.m. Still no official count. Players were in the voting room, but nobody knew the tally. Clark's phone rang. The Miami billionaire. Final offer, he said. $200 million. 10 years. Complete creative control. Yes or no in the next 60 seconds. Clark looked at her laptop, at the contract she'd been staring at for hours, at the future that would make her the richest female athlete in history. Ask me in 5 minutes, she said and hung up. 11:58 a.m. The doors to the voting room opened. Sophie Cunningham emerged first, her face unreadable. Then came Wilson, Stewart, Taurasi. Then the rest. 143 players filing out in silence. The commissioner stepped to the microphone. The entire basketball world was watching. ESPN had broken into regular programming. Social media had essentially stopped for this moment. The vote on the collective growth proposal, commonly known as WNBA+, has concluded. She paused. Clark felt her heart stop. The measure passes. 87 votes in favor, 56 against. The room erupted, but the commissioner wasn't done. Effective immediately, the WNBA enters a new era. Miss Clark, your 5-year commitment is now binding. Clark's phone buzzed. The Miami billionaire again. This time just 3 words. You chose wrong. But looking around the room, at players crying, hugging, arguing, processing, Clark knew the truth. She hadn't chosen wrong. She'd chosen complicated. She'd chosen messy. She'd chosen real. The war for the WNBA's soul was over. The battle for its future had just begun. 6 months later, the numbers told the story better than any headline could. The WNBA+ system wasn't perfect. Critics called it corporate. Traditionalists called it sellout basketball. But the results were undeniable. Average player salary, $530,000, up from $120,000 the year before. Minimum salary for rookies, $250,000, up from $66,079. Maximum contracts, $1.3 million base, with revenue-sharing bonuses pushing total compensation past $1.5 million for top performers. And Caitlin Clark? She honored every promise she made in that hotel room. Her Nike money funded a player development fund that sent $87,000 to every single WNBA player. Her production company employed 23 players in off-court roles. Her mentorship program connected 8 young players with brand partnerships worth 6 figures each. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was structural. For the first time in WNBA history, player compensation was tied directly to league revenue growth. No more arbitrary caps. No more begging for scraps. When the league made money, players made money. That simple principle, the same one NBA players had enjoyed for decades, finally applied to women's basketball. The path to get there had been brutal. The negotiations that followed Clark's proposal lasted 47 days. The league initially rejected revenue sharing entirely, offering only fixed salary increases. Players held firm. Sponsors applied pressure. The threat of Project B and other alternative leagues loomed over every conversation. In the end, ownership blinked. They had no choice. The new CBA included uncapped revenue sharing that would grow salaries automatically as the league expanded. Maximum salaries could reach nearly $2 million over the life of the deal. The salary cap jumped to $5 million per team, up from $1.5 million. Multiple players per roster could earn supermax contracts simultaneously. But here's what the headlines missed. The real revolution wasn't in the numbers. It was in the transparency. For the first time, players would know exactly how revenue was calculated, how profits were distributed, how their labor translated into league income. The old system, where players received just 9.3% of revenue, while NBA players got 49 to 51%, was exposed and dismantled. Sophie Cunningham became the first elected player representative under the new system. Her job, ensuring the promises made in that 4 seasons ballroom actually happened. She took it seriously. Every quarter, she published reports showing exactly where the money went. The veterans who'd opposed Clark's plan, most came around eventually, not because they suddenly loved her, but because their bank accounts told them to. Io Wilson's new contract made her the highest paid player in league history. Breanna Stewart's endorsement deals tripled under the new platform sharing model. Even Diana Taurasi, in her final season, earned more than she had in any previous year. The generational divide didn't disappear. It evolved. Younger players stopped seeing veterans as gatekeepers. Veterans stopped seeing rookies as threats. They became what they should have been all along, colleagues building something together. But Caitlin Clark paid a price for all of it. The relationship she fractured during those negotiations never fully healed. Some players respected her. Some tolerated her. Some would never forgive her for exposing uncomfortable truths they'd spent careers avoiding. She accepted that. She had to. You don't change systems by being liked, she told a reporter 6 months after the new CBA passed. You change them by being necessary. That quote became the defining statement of women's basketball's new era. Necessary, not popular, not perfect, necessary. The Miami billionaire never got his rival league. Project B struggled to recruit top American talent once WNBA salaries became competitive. The alternative leagues that had threatened to gut women's basketball became what they should have been: off-season opportunities, not escape routes. And those Panini trading cards, the ones Dan Patrick refused to open, they're selling for $400 now. Sealed boxes across $1,200 on the secondary market. Collectors who bought during that first chaotic release are sitting on small fortunes. But the real value isn't in cardboard. It's in what those cards represent. They document the moment women's basketball stopped apologizing for its existence. The moment one player forced an entire industry to confront its hypocrisy. The moment the WNBA stopped being a charity case and became a business that compensated its workers fairly. Was it Caitlin Clark's market power that destroyed the WNBA's balance? Yes, absolutely, without question. But sometimes destruction is necessary. Sometimes the old balance was never balanced at all. Sometimes it takes someone willing to burn everything down to build something worth keeping. The WNBA that exists now, the one with million-dollar salaries, revenue sharing, and packed arenas, wouldn't exist without the chaos Clark created. That's not opinion. That's observable reality. Sophie Cunningham was right all along. You can argue about whether Clark deserved the attention, whether the racial dynamics were fair, whether the media coverage was proportionate. Those are valid conversations, but you cannot argue with outcomes. And the outcome is clear. Women's basketball is finally being treated like what it always was. A professional sport worthy of professional compensation. Players are finally sharing in the wealth they create. Fans are finally watching a league that respects itself. That transformation required someone willing to say the uncomfortable thing. Someone willing to be hated for being honest. Someone willing to use their power for more than personal gain. Caitlin Clark didn't ask to be that person, but she became her anyway. And the WNBA will never be the same.